Following a meeting with Zelensky and European leaders in Washington, Trump affirmed his country would back European security guarantees in Ukraine.
At least 7 people were killed and more than a dozen injured after Russia struck Kharkiv overnight into Monday, just hours before a heavily anticipated Trump-Zelensky meeting. Norwegian prosecutors have indicted the eldest son of Crown Princess Mette on 32 counts, including multiple counts of rape and abuse.
Hamas informed mediators that it approved the latest Gaza ceasefire proposal, several international and Israeli media outlets reported.
U.S. President Donald Trump affirmed his country would back European security guarantees in Ukraine following the highly anticipated meeting between himself, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky, and European leaders. Details of the security guarantees are still evolving, and Trump did not specify what Ukraine would be asked to give in exchange. Zelensky welcomed the commitment from Trump, adding that he'd had the opportunity for the first time to directly talk with him about the importance of the captured areas to Ukraine.
І для мене це дуже чутливий момент. Я хотів про це. Мені здається, що президент почув і бачив це, і ми були різні моменти, але це важлива інформація. І тому питання території це питання, яке ми залишимо між мною і Путіним.
Trump announced that he had called Russian President Vladimir Putin after the talks to set up a trilateral meeting with Zelensky. Zelensky said he was willing to meet without preconditions, but also stressed the importance of a face-to-face meeting with Putin to end the war.
At least 7 people were killed and more than a dozen others were injured after Russia struck Kharkiv overnight into Monday. Ukrainian officials say the Kremlin fired a new barrage of missiles and drones targeting the northeastern city. Regional governor of Kharkiv, Oleksiy Neubov, says a 2-year-old boy was among those killed in the attack. 6 of those wounded were also children, ranging from 6 to 17 in age. Local officials say many victims are still trapped under the rubble, warning that figures may continue to rise. Kharkiv has been a target of Russia's intensified aerial assault. On Sunday, the city was struck with an array of drones and guided bombs, injuring several people. The adjacent Sumy region also came under Russian attack in the early hours of Monday. 2 people were injured and more than a dozen homes and an educational institution sustained damage. The Black Sea port city of Odessa has also been placed under monitoring after residents reported hearing explosions late on Sunday and into the early hours of Monday. The attacks come as Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky arrived in Washington for a crucial meeting with U.S. President Donald Trump in the White House. Trump, just hours before he's due to welcome Zelensky, ruled out joining NATO and reclaiming Crimea as part of any potential peace deal with Russia. The meeting comes just days after Trump's Alaskan summit with Russia's President Vladimir Putin in a military base on Friday. Zelensky, making his first visit to the White House since late February's dramatic showdown, will be accompanied by a slew of European leaders, NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte, and European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen.
Russian president has reportedly told Donald Trump that one of his demands is full control of Donbas. Now, the region in eastern Ukraine with a pre-war population of 6.5 million people includes 2 regions, Donetsk and Luhansk. Moscow's demands regarding it are not new. They aren't even from 2022. Putin has been trying to occupy Donbas for 11 years since Russia's first invasion of Ukraine. But even with the full-out war of 2022, Moscow still failed to occupy all of Donbas militarily and hopes to do it now with the maximalist demands under Trump's mediation. The US-based Institute for the Study of War estimates that Russia will be unable to seize all of Donetsk region rapidly by force, since Moscow has been trying to do so for over a decade and failed. Russia could only rapidly seize all of Donetsk region if Ukraine concedes to Putin's demands and withdraws from it. Putin's claim that Russian forces will inevitably seize all of Donetsk region if the war continues is false. The Russian campaign for Chasiv Yar began in May 2023 after Russian forces seized Bakhmut, east of Chasiv Yar, and has then intensified a year later in April 2024. It has taken Russian forces 26 months to advance roughly 11 kilometers from western Bakhmut to the western edge of Chasiv Yar. The Pokrovsk assault campaign began in February 2024 after the seizure of Avdiivka. Moscow has dedicated multiple efforts to seizing Pokrovsk through frontal assaults, envelopment or encirclement, all of which have thus been unsuccessful after more than 18 months. Putin previously said that he also wants to control two more regions of Ukraine, Zaporizhia and Kherson. This, according to the UK Defence Ministry, would take Moscow 4 years and a half and 2 more million Russian casualties killed and wounded, on top of 1 million troops that Russia has already lost in casualties since the beginning of its full-scale invasion of Ukraine.
Norwegian prosecutors have indicted the eldest son of Crown Princess Mette on multiple charges following a lengthy investigation. 28-year-old Marius Borg Høiby was charged with close to 36 counts, including multiple counts of rape and abuse. He was also charged with other offenses including violence against a former partner, making death threats, and traffic violations. Høiby faces up to 10 years behind bars if convicted on all counts. His defense attorney in a statement said that his client denies all charges of sexual abuse and the majority of violence charges and plans to fight it in court. Prosecutors say they expect the trial to begin in mid-January next year and estimate it to last around 6 weeks.
Hamas informed mediators that it approved the latest Gaza ceasefire proposal, several international and Israeli media outlets reported. The proposal was presented to the militant group a day before. It involved a framework agreement for a 60-day ceasefire and a 2-step release of the hostages held in Gaza. Egypt and Qatar were mediating the talks with Hamas in an effort to revive the stalled negotiations. Speaking at a news conference, the Egyptian foreign minister also addressed rumors about Palestinian relocation.
بالدول التي يتردد أو يشاع أنها ستستقبل فلسطينيين، احنا تحدثنا عن هذا الأمر وكما ذكرت احنا على تواصل معهم، وكل دولة نتواصل معها يؤكد أن هذا عبث وهذا أمر غير واقعي.
Efforts to reach a ceasefire were ramped up after Israel announced plans to take complete control of Gaza City. This had raised further international concerns amid fears of a worsening humanitarian catastrophe in the Strip. To celebrate 70 years of being the world's largest music event, Eurovision Song Contest got a fresh new look, including new logos and a custom-made font. The original hand-drawn logo was redesigned into a single simplified design. The contest's iconic heart, however, remains at the center of the logo. It now incorporates 70 layers, one for each year of Eurovision. The brand new identity will be used across all platforms as Austria gears up to host the competition in 2026.
Debunking Russian allegations that the EU is plotting Hungarian regime change. Russia's intelligence service, the SVR, has alleged that the European Commission is studying scenarios for regime change in Hungary. In a statement on the 13th of August, the SVR says significant material, administrative, media and lobbying resources have been mobilized in support of Peter Magyar, a former insider in the government of Viktor Orban, whose centre-right party is currently topping the polls. The statement also alleges that the Ukrainian government has actively joined the campaign to dismantle the Hungarian government on orders from Brussels. The allegations have been amplified by known disinformation actors online. Independent Hungarian journalists say Russia's spy service is openly campaigning against Peter Magyar, who is Orban's fiercest political rival, in order to discredit him ahead of parliamentary elections expected next April. Orban, considered a Kremlin-friendly voice within the European Union, has consistently stalled EU support to Ukraine, by wielding Hungary's veto power on foreign policy decisions. The polls suggest Orbán could be unseated as Hungary's Prime Minister next year after 15 years in power.
The human embryos are like free living forms, free floating forms it's called, for 5 days. Day 5, they're 200 cells, more or less, very, very microscopic. Then they need to attach to the mother, and you lost them until they show up in an ultrasound weeks later, right? So what happens between day 5 and then the ultrasound? Completely black box.
It's a fascinating study because it's really looking to try and understand why some embryos implant and why some don't. It's obviously a very difficult part of reproduction to study, and so the scientists have come up with a model whereby embryos can implant in a laboratory into tissue that's very, very similar to endometrium, which is the lining of the uterus.